Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can look at the description below and find a place to join us in Zoom, maybe today, maybe some other day, but there's a link there that you can use to actually get into the conversation if you'd like. If you're here in Zoom and this is the first time that you've joined us, let me give you a little bit of a tour around. And someone's got an open mic. I don't know who it is. Somebody's bouncing around there. Anyway, so let me give you a little tour. If you're in as an attendee, welcome. It's good to have you here. I hope if this is your first time, we're glad to have you join. If you see the panelists here, they got here early. So they got here earlier than you probably, or maybe not, or they've chosen to jump in. We open about 6 o'clock. 6 at the latest, sometimes a little earlier. So you can come in then. And then we just have kind of an open conversation. Today, we're figuring out how to do some screen shares. Other days, we're talking about, whatever comes up in the first half hour. At 6:30, we distribute the Discord link. The Discord link is a place where there's 500 of us talking about this all day over chat. So if you want to be part of Discord, you need to show up here at 6:30. It's a 30-minute link. So if you don't have it now, you won't have it until tomorrow. So you just have to jump on Discord there. But everybody that has raised their Zoom hand by 6:40 is in the panel right now. They have good video, good audio, good internet, and they've raised their hand and said they volunteered themselves to join this. Once we start the mic checks, so if you come here and we're doing mic checks, if you see someone going around, going to everybody's levels, it's too late. We've closed the panel. So you need to come back the next day and try again. So that's kind of the basic setup here. Now, if you're an attendee, you have a couple extra options that we as panelists don't have. That is, we all have the chat, so we can all chat amongst ourselves, even the panelists. But we also have Q&A. We prioritize the Q&A from 7 on. So between 6 and 7, all the panelists are all talking amongst yourselves. But really, we as panelists are really hoping to take care of the questions and answers that come up in the Q&A area. So what you can do is you can ask questions in the Q&A area. Make sure that they're less than 5 lines. It's just hard for us to keep reading them and keep up with them if they're longer. Make sure there's one question per post. If you start asking multiple questions, we'll either dismiss it or we'll just read the first one. And then our don't post it, cross post from the chat or anything else like that. And don't put any comments in there. We'll just dismiss comments. So if it's not a question, don't put it in the question and answer, put it in the chat area. We've got the way this kind of works is 6 to 7, we're getting ready. 7 to 8, we do just an open Q&A. And then from 8 to 9, we have what we call a second hour. Today's second hour, we're going to join Chris Summers. He is going to talk about lenses. So we're going to really talk about all the things that happen in the lens before it gets to the sensor. So we're going to have kind of a deep dive with Chris over that. And these Wednesdays have been amazing. Last week was all about filters. I didn't know we could fill an hour with filters, but we could. So anyway, that is coming up at 8 to 9 today. Tomorrow from 8 to 9. We're going to have Leo Laporte on, Leo Laporte from twit.tv, and he's going to come on and talk about hosting. And really, we just have Leo Laporte here. I think we were talking about it yesterday on MacBreak, and he was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know how I could talk about hosting. I'm like, we're just going to ask you a bunch of questions. So think about your questions that you want to ask Leo, and we'll put them on the grill tomorrow between 8 and 9. Then on Friday from 8 to 9, Jeff Keithley is going to talk more about virtual production in the cloud. He's been doing a lot of work there. We want to bring him back and see what the new experiences are. Saturday's our long day. We do 2 hours of Q&A from 7 to 9. And then Nick Justishin is going to talk about Unreal Engine. Steve Bays is going to talk about Final Cut. Alex Goldner is going to talk about broadcast graphics. And we've got something special we're working on for noon. So there's 7 hours of fun here on Saturday. And Sunday is mostly just 2 hours of Q&A. And it's usually a bit of more philosophical day. So we tend to kind of go a little lax and just have a good time, talk about the last week and kind of figure out what we want to do next. If for some reason you like this enough that you want to share it with other people, you can use this link. So you can share that link wherever you want and invite people that you think might be interested in this. What we're always looking for is more people like you. So anyway, so let's without further ado, I'm going to put Phil on the hot griddle again and have him start with the Q&A. A couple things about the Q&A is ask those questions early. We will get to all the questions generally, but we answer them much faster at the end of the hour than at the beginning of the hour. So you as participants really control that. If you vote those questions to the top, there's a little, you can vote them up. So if you vote those questions to the top, that's going to help prioritize those questions for us. We'll spend more time on the questions at the beginning of the hour than what we spend on at the end of the hour. So getting questions in early and then voting those questions up is going to help drive the conversation from your end. So anyway, go ahead, Phil. What do we got?
So Elaine wants to know, is there a way to connect OBS to Zoom on the Mac? I want to feed my second screen presentation into Zoom and still keep my video on.
We should be, that should be doable. I think that's now working with the OBS with the virtual camera. Is that not working for folks? Go ahead, Mike.
I mean, I'm just saying the Windows version, the OBS virtual camera works. Doesn't work for you, Elaine?
No, it did not. And I don't want to go into presentation, sharing the screen. That just didn't work for me. So what I ended up doing is I had my iPad joined as well, and I did my keynote on that on the iPad, so it doesn't give me a presenter screen, which is fine because I didn't need that. And then I brought it in as like the person speaking, but I pinned it, but that's not what I want to do. I want to have, like, if you see me now, I want in the top right corner, top left corner.
Have you tested Memo Live?
Yeah, that works great. That's what's going to be what I'm going to fall back to because it's actually working.
Perfect. Mickey, did you have something else? And then we'll move on.
Yeah, in terms of OBS to Zoom, that's what I'm doing right now for getting the meters and also Chris's presentation later into this webinar.
So you're using OBS right now?
Yeah, I have OBS running. I have the virtual camera plugin installed, and it just shows up in Zoom.
On a Mac?
Yes, on a Mac.
Virtual camera plugin. I'll try it out, but
you might have run into that signing problem like they had with Zoom too, and which it may be fixed. Who knows?
Well, it's just that the people, my audience that I'm training, the teachers, they want to try to keep it on the cheap, right? So they want to go and get something like OBS that's free. So,
Alex,
but they may have to.
I wanted to move on here, but this is an important point. Mickey, are you using the 32-bit build of the virtual camera plugin for Mac? Because I didn't see a 64-bit build. Did they finally do that?
I actually don't know. How do I check that?
Are you on Mojave or Catalina?
I'm on Mojave.
Okay,
so you're on the 32-bit.
So that's
32-bit
so
build.
that's the issue there. There's not a 64-bit build of the virtual camera plugin for Mac. I tried to recompile it. It is open source. I was unsuccessful. This was some time ago. That may have changed at some point. In the meantime, you can go from OBS to NDI. Use the NDI tools.
No, I'll just go to Memo Live. I want something that works. I want something.
I want
something that works. Yeah.
Yeah. I would probably lean towards Memo Live, and also remember that there is educational pricing for Memo Live, and you have it free until the end of July, but there's also educational pricing for it. So take that into account. All right, let's go to the next question. Yep.
Yeah, Laura asks, you have any presentation tips that are relevant on Zoom more than in person?
It's a good question. I mean, I think one of the things that the big thing is just remember that when you turn your presentation on, people can't see you anymore. So the issue is that they're watching a screen. And so you really have to be conscious to the fact that they're watching something that isn't moving, that isn't still. And so in general, most people produce very bad presentations on Keynote and PowerPoint. So the problem that we have is that we kind of get over that by having a lot of energy in the room. We don't have that anymore. And so what you end up with is these stills with tons of text. I mean, there is I would say that the rules that we would generally have for PowerPoint and Keynote are still valid, which is don't use words. Like you have a tool to use words, which is your mouth. And so what you want to use what a presentation tool is really good for, what a presentation tool are showing diagrams and images that underline what you're trying to show. You'll watch, Chris is pretty good at this and very good at it. So like in the second hour, you'll see a bunch of images with a couple words, but they're not like, he doesn't give you bullet points going down of the things that you want to think about with lenses. You have imagery that helps underline what you're talking about. What the mistake most people make with presentations is they want to read their presentation because that's their notes. That's how they keep track of what they're going to say. Well, it turns out you can actually have a note section, a speaker. There's things, speaker notes in every one of these presentation tools. That's what you should be using, not your actual slides that are beating your viewers into a submission. And so the main thing is get rid of all of that. Really focus on being visual, and then understand that you shouldn't leave things up for a long period of time. When you, if you're just talking under a slide, as soon as you've covered it, you want to get back to you if you can. The hard part with screen sharing is that it's hard to switch back and forth. Now, if you're in a meeting, people can kind of do that themselves. They can see you and then they can see the image. But if you're in a webinar, that's all they're going to see. As long as you leave that slide up, that's all they're going to see. And so that becomes an issue. That's why when I'm talking to a lot of corporations right now, I'm recommending stuff like the A10 Mini because it lets them just cut back and forth between their presentation and themselves. And that's going to help kind of tie all that stuff up. But you have to be on any online forum, on anything, you have to be much more focused on being interesting, because people have a lot of choices. They've got, you're one of sometimes many windows that are opened at the same time. You need to be really interesting, or they're going to drop, or they're not, or they're going to be there. And we were doing this in seminars all the time. We're all down there looking at our phones and texting each other and checking our emails and doing other work. I mean, I don't know when there's been very few seminars that I've been in the last decade where I didn't have my computer up and I was doing something else, listening with one ear, because it wasn't very good, and so occasionally there's something that's a good speaker who's really able to keep everybody's attention, but we have to get better at that. We have to improve our ability to do that. Anyway, Phil and then Jeffrey, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, one of the big things I tell people is that you have, like, we have our audio gauge right here that tells us if we're on our audio. You need to look at people's eyes and get that feedback to see if they're connecting with what you're saying. So don't just go into autopilot and start going through your slides 1, 2, 3. Be watching those people's eyes, and if you're losing them, they're going to tell you that they're being lost, and be willing to change as you're going on the fly, because some people start to go down a rat hole, and people are just, literally will tell you with their body language that this isn't working for me, and switch.
And the other thing is just know that if you, we did a bunch of eye tracking a decade ago, and what we found was if you talk for 3 to 5 minutes straight without interaction with the audience, it's like a cliff. Somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes, people just stop interacting with the event there. And what we were tracking was, are they looking at the screen? So what happens is that people just start looking down. That means they're doing something else. They're looking, basically the heat maps that we had on the screen where they're not looking at what they're there. You're losing them at 3 to 5 minutes of talking. Once you put up a slide, it's 60 to 90 seconds. Like, that's what you have. You have 60 to 90 seconds with that slide before the attention starts to drop off. And we see it here. If people put up slides that are text heavy or something they have to read, I can literally see the whole panel go, so you just have to be very conscious that our ability to do this kind of presentation is going to have to get a lot better. It's been bad for 20 years, but it's going to have to improve a lot as we keep on moving online. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, very important to make sure that you're looking at the camera. They just did an article about how TikTok people, anybody that's looking directly at the camera rather than looking at the screen, has better followers and better attention brought to their videos. So you want to definitely look at the panelists from time to time, but try and train yourself to looking at that camera, even though it looks completely dead.
Well, and that gets into also, having, if you're doing this all the time, a teleprompter is a good thing. If you're going to do when I do a full-on presentation, I have a teleprompter up. I have one right now. I tend to look down because I'm looking at the grid and I can't see the grid on the current teleprompter I have. So I look down a little bit. But when I'm talking to Jeffrey right now, I'm looking right at him, and I see him, and so it's a good investment in that area. So anyway, next question.
Phil Lenger, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, asks, What system would you recommend for QA moderation engagement for a 1,000-person online event that needed to happen in the next 6 weeks?
The current winner right now is Zoom. To do that. I may be able to show you some stuff soon.
But if the event wasn't happening in Zoom,
yeah, I have something very close to the surface.
6 weeks.
So, yeah,
okay.
You should be able to see it in 2. So we're flipping the switch on. So
great.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Charles Klein, when using a Blackmagic 6K with an ATEM Mini Pro for Zoom calls, can you shade the camera using the Davinci Resolve Mini panel?
You should be able to. I don't know that for certain, but there's no reason why it wouldn't be able to, because it's talking to the switcher via there's no reason if the shading tools are there, there's no reason why you can't. I don't know if it's the Davinci Resolve Mini panel. I'm sorry. There's a shading panel for ATEM. I don't know if I do believe the mini panel will work. I'm not 100% certain. Does anyone know if that, has anyone tried? I know we used it with our older ATEM switchers, and so I don't think that there will be any problem with it, but I'm not 100% certain. I don't know if anyone else has any certainty there, but I know that we got one and we were using it with our other cameras, with mini URSAs and larger ATEM switchers. So the connection should work, but I'm not 100% certain. We got stumped to some degree. We'll see if we can get one in house and test it. Next question.
Our friend Damon Hamoff, yesterday you mentioned the mesh negatively affects stream latency, among other things. That said, which wireless access point connected to a Meraki would you recommend? Alex, kind of reliability.
Meraki. Well, I mean, for reliability, if you're going to use it, hi Damon, by the way, it's good to have you here in the group. In general, I wouldn't use wireless for streaming, period. Like if there's any way you can avoid it, I would avoid all versions of Wi-Fi and mesh and everything else to do anything that I have to interconnect, especially if I'm dealing with a real-time communication. You're going to see breakup. You're just going to see breakup. The next thing is that for Meraki makes APs, and that's what I would use. I mean, if I'm using a Meraki system, if I'm connecting it to Meraki, I would use the Meraki APs because they're going to be really easy to manage inside of that level. But there's no 100%. As soon as you get off of a wire, there's no 100% solution. And mesh goes down to 50%. Like you're just going to break up and things happening and so on and so forth. And I have a mesh network in my house, and I just know that I can't use it I don't even have my phone do the Wi-Fi calling or whatever because of the mesh can't handle it. So you just have to note that that's going to be, meshes are just problematic. And again, with Meraki, what I would do is use Meraki APs. I know that they're more expensive, but they work pretty well. Anyway, that's my answer. Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
Well, if the problem you're trying to solve is you physically can't run a wire, which you really need to be able to run a wire to do this reliably. But if you simply can't run a wire, go with Ubiquiti. They have excellent point-to-point wireless solutions.
This is just a Wi-Fi. I think this is just looking at mesh versus. He said mesh.
The question isn't really clear. So yes, but the answer is yes. Avoid mesh. Mesh is not your friend in this context. Wi-Fi is not your friend, but if you have to use it, do point-to-point. And if you can avoid that, then run a wire if you at all possible.
And I have you are watching me over Ubiquiti dish. I have a Ubiquiti dish that is on my roof, and it's sending this signal about 3 miles to a mountain or to a small mountain hill that looks very rocky. And then it brings via fiber down into Novato. So the point-to-points are a different issue than what you have in your house. Anyway, go ahead, Yashai, and then we'll move on.
Okay, I just want to say that yes, the best thing is definitely to use wired. But however, in this particular case, I have experience with Google Mesh, and right now I'm running on Google Mesh, and I have my wife and my daughter right now running Zoom while I'm doing the same thing right now. It works perfectly. And regarding yesterday's comment, with the HIPAA, I forgot the name of this program. If you pay attention to the question, the upload was only 12 megabit per second, which is critical. And I think that was the weak link as opposed to the mesh in his particular case yesterday.
Copy. Next question.
Is it the ping that matters in a mesh that gets blown away?
It's the jitter. Okay. There's a lot of jitter because it's doing a lot of negotiation, and so it break and it can work some of the time, and then not all the time. It's just I find it to be messy. Anyway, right. Next question.
Jonas Dottel, do you know a way to have fallback image when an RTMP stream goes out?
Well, it depends on what you're managing. So you can definitely do that as an input. If you're streaming it directly to the CDN, no, because you're on one side of the RTMP and it's on the other. If you are, once you're streaming into a system, so if you're streaming into AWS or into Restream, I believe all of those have some way to insert an image if you need to. So if you're streaming to some kind of intermediary where you're doing a mezzanine connection to their mezzanine connection to wherever you're going, there's definitely ways to insert those images, into that process. But if you're on one side of the RTMP, there's no setting on many CDNs to just drop an image in, which would be kind of cool. But what would happen most likely is it would accidentally put it up when it would, the CDN would freak out and put it up when you don't want it. So it probably would be something that most people didn't use. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Not for CDNs, but when it comes to YouTube and Facebook, they both have now options. Facebook just added this in their new interface where you can uncheck a box to say if your RTMP goes offline, that it'll wait for you. And when that happens, whatever image you set in there will show up. And same thing with YouTube, that'll do that.
Yeah, we've stayed away from the YouTube slides. Here's all I'll say about YouTube with the the new interface I'm still learning how to use, which I think it's a dumpster fire of an interface. I think we all agree. But with the older interface, one of the things we were really careful of is not allowing other people to be in your live event while you're running a live event. One person should be in there. Do not have other people logging in and doing other things. And I know that there's a clip function and there's all these other functions that you can do. And we had someone turn an event off for a half an hour. We couldn't figure out what happened because they had punched some button. All those tools are all in one place. And to make it even better, YouTube puts the share button right next to the live button and the end stream button, which is, I don't know who thought of that, but not me. So there's a lot of disastrous parts of those pieces, but yeah, I'm glad to know that they have a failover slide. We just haven't used it because we don't trust the platforms that much. Usually we want the platforms to do as little as we can because they usually move fast and break things. Next question.
Andrew Chinisi asks about ideas for taking a still black and white photo and making it come to life without spending thousands of dollars. The photo starts as a still and then the people in background begin moving and talking.
The moving and talking part is pretty complicated. The one thing to make a still look more alive is you can cut people out, put them into 3D planes, and kind of push the camera really slowly, and you can get some parallax that makes them start to feel like they're there. Having them moving and talking becomes a thing. Go ahead, Bill.
The simplest way without all the parallax stuff is to create the still from your video. Park video somewhere that you want to be the still, capture that. Then you're going to have to do a mask to knock out whoever the primary subject is. But then when you cut to the video at the same point, the background can start moving and the foreground image that you've cut out will keep going.
I think that this is really taking, how I'm reading is taking an old photo and making it, current. By the way, as a complete aside, I don't have the link here. Maybe someone can find it and put it in the chat. Someone took old 15 frame per second footage from 100 years ago, and they ran it through optical flow and a bunch of corrections, and they gave us 4K 30 frames per second.
60 frame.
Was it 60 frames? Oh my gosh, is it amazing? It is.
It's New York City stuff.
It's a couple different clips.
Paris.
Oh my gosh, it's just stunning. I mean, I just, it's mesmerizing because you really are taken back into a into the past. But if someone can put that in the chat, maybe put it in the links for Discord. I don't know where it is. I just remember I saw it a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago maybe, and I was just like, this is, and it's following along. The other one that's really fascinating is Peter Jackson's World War I. They took all the World War I footage and used optical flow and all the corrections to give you, a feel of really what it was like to be there. Because, all those things, when people look like they're moving fast or jittery, obviously there was a lot of variance in people capturing then, and he cleaned it all up. And it's just, it's a fascinating thing. But yeah, I don't have any way of taking, if they're old stills, I would add some parallax to them. There it is. Yeah. And it's just, they clean it all up for you, and it's just an amazing experience. Anyway, next question.
Sorry, that was me. Patrick Denny asks, has anyone tried using the Sony RXO Mark II Cybershot camera and the CCB WD-1 camera to control box as a remote controlled zoom camera? If so, what are the challenges and overall appearance?
That is a new one for us, I think. I don't have any. It's funny. I think oftentimes we're in. There's some specific questions you can have. We're good at theory, and then you get into a very specific thing, and a lot of us just don't. We haven't used that piece of hardware. Trying to look at the control box here. It's an interesting. Let's see. Does any? Yeah, haven't used it, but it looks interesting. It looks like you could put. I'm just going to kind of guess that it looks like you might be able to put that control box onto a VPN. So if you put it into a VPN you'd have to have some kind of VPN there, and then you wouldn't be, and then you'd be able to, you theoretically could control the camera at that point. I mean, you still don't have pan tilt zoom, but you possibly could do some of the control and firing. I felt like most of the controls that does is mostly it actually turning it on at a certain time. I didn't really read it when I've seen it at NAB. I didn't read the camera or the control unit as something that really shaded the camera as much as it fired it. So you could have 100 of them, and you could fire them all 100th of a second apart, or 60, whatever you want, to create kind of bullet time or to create frozen moments and those types of things. And so that was the, I don't know if that would. I don't think anyone's used it for Zoom. It's a heavy operation for Zoom, but I think that it could be useful. It's a cool camera system as far as being able to create. A lot of people were trying to, first they were doing it in the Matrix, and then people were doing it with GoPros, and then this RX0 is Sony's version, which is a much more built up version that you can build kind of an array of cameras and fire them all off at a specific time. But I don't think it would. I don't know if it would be a great solution for Zoom. I think there's probably better ones. The Huddle Cam is probably the better choice. Guy had showed it earlier, which is you can pan tilt zoom, control it, everything else. Someone can control it over Zoom. So you can actually get to it. So if I was going to choose a system, I'd probably choose the Huddle Cam over this setup. Next question.
Yes, Wouter. Would you use royalty-free music for your commercial streams, or would you buy licensed music? Personally, I think paying for it gives you more unique music.
So the fundamental problem with royalty-free music is there's a high probability that somebody else has used it. And so you risk, every time you put it on, you risk that it could be picked up by the copyright protection, not because it's still royalty-free, but someone puts it into their show, and then they protect their show. They say, my show, this is my show, and they happen to have that music in there, and then it basically matches that hash. For instance, a great way for you we learned a great way to get a strike on YouTube is to play bars and tone. So bars and tone is the most basic royalty-free thing you can do. It's a set of color bars and a 1K tone, and you will get hit by 3 or 4 different copyright holders if you do that, because it was somewhere in their stream. It had nothing to do with, so you have to remember that if you do something like a Pond 5 or any of these other music things, is that someone else did that too. It's for $5. There's a high probability that someone else is using it in their stream. So I think that's more of a, definitely have, you can get unique music. Not all of us have that. What my recommendation is that you do learn the basics of GarageBand or Logic or other things like that, where you can throw something together. If you're not going to pay you know, you can put something together that's original, and learning how to do that as a basic skill set is something that I use a lot. If I don't have the money to pay someone to build something, a lot of times I'm just throwing something, you know, I just throw something basic together inside of those tracks, or you get a composer. And you know, there's a lot of different ranges if you don't make it too hard. If they're using samples and they're spending a day on it, it doesn't have to be this, you know, $10,000, you know, solution for you to have someone throw something together. But having something original is going to make it a lot easier for you to, you know, keep it protected. Jeffrey, and then Justin.
I've created many songs myself using software like GarageBand and stuff like that. So that's a great idea. The other thing is royalty free. Even though it's not supposed to happen, there are artists that will turn around and they will copyright their music, and it's super hard to even just try and go after or try and defend yourself off of that. So just yeah, I wouldn't do it at all.
Yeah, it's just it's probably and. If you're working for a company, the most successful company this has been an issue for companies for a long time, you know, of what do we do with and what we've seen a lot of large corporations do is they go, we're going to go to a composer and have them create 10 or 12 songs that are similar to songs, you know, give you the vibe that they have, that, you know, but are similar. And then we're going to use those all year. That's the sound of our events, you know, and now we own that. We don't have to worry about it. We can play it. We can play it in the room. We can play it out there. I mean, and before the stream goes live, they might be playing ASCAP BMI type of stuff for everyone to get used to it. But once we go live, we just play the walk-on music, the in-between music, even the ambient music right before the event. At some point, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes before the event, it just switches over to their music, you know, and a lot of times, you know, there's this typical, like there's the make it sound like the song, but not so much that I get sued. so, you know, a lot of times they get inspiration, you know, inspiration for the song, you know, the inspiration for, if you listen to Mac Break is Jane's Addiction Stop. You know, that's, you know, because it's Mac Break. So if you listen to Jane's Addiction Stop, it's not the same. We used a lot of different chords and a lot of different process and a different momentum. You know, there's a lot of things that are all different about it, but that was the inspiration that was sent to the composer. And so that's the, you know, that all, you can have something that's close, but not 100% that piece, and far enough away that you don't get yourself in trouble. Justin, and then Jan, and then Victor, but make it quick. 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, quick. If you do use royalty-free, you may have to get a whitelist. I ran into audio blocks using a royalty-free track that got hit, and I had to go back and get a whitelisting from audio blocks to add to YouTube.
Yep. And the issue you have there is that it doesn't matter what paper you signed or what agreement. There is a place that they have to okay your footage inside of a CMS for that channel. So the owner inside of YouTube has to approve this channel there. Jan, go ahead.
I've got a project I'm working on from old videos that I have of concert footage. If anybody knows a lawyer or anything about that, that could help me out with that, please put it in the Discord link. I posted it, the question, in I need help.
Yeah, absolutely. Victor, go ahead.
Just to your music point, inspired by Office Hours theme, inspired by Austin Powers, not Austin Powers.
Exactly. You know, and you can, you're getting the flavor of it, you know, there's, you know, we're having fun with it. We're having, you know, and that's, you know, that's what you just want to stay away from stepping right on it or samples or following the exact notes, but you can definitely be inspired by, yeah, that's great, Victor. Thank you for letting people know. Next question.
Aaron Booker asks, he says he wants to move the gear shipping to events towards LTL freight. Love how FedEx freight works and its speed. Suggestions for case builders and how to get excellent cases built for speed of load out, load in.
Let's go ahead, Jan.
This is too long for this. Go to Discord, send me a link. I can help you out a great deal, but I'm not going to get into it right now. It's a lot of information that he wants to know, but there are plenty of carriers that will do exactly what he wants, and plenty.
And the thing, and you're breaking up a little bit, Jan. I'm not sure exactly why.
That was my. Sorry.
Oh yeah. A couple things. The one that we've kind of the couple. I'll just say a couple things about it, and then we'll move on. Rocket for us has been our freight of choice. It's not the cheapest freight of choice, but holy smokes, we can have them pick something up at our office and it shows up to the minute. Like we had them deliver half a truckload of hardware to Davos in the middle of the winter, during, World Economic Forum or whatever, where there was 3 feet of snow. It was just a crazy environment. And these guys show up literally with plus or minus 1 minute and we kept on telling the crew that was setting up, like, our truck is going to show up on time. And they're like, nothing has been on time for the last 3 days. And this truck shows up on time. And so, and Rocket will manage all of your carnets and all the other things. They just come and put it together. The one thing I will say about the case building is 55 inches is the maximum height that you want to make your cases. And there is, I'll try to find it and put it on Discord as well. I can't think of the case. We have a great, Brian, do you remember I don't remember. If Marty was here, he'd be able to tell us who we use. We use someone in LA that just builds amazing cases, and we send them little outlines and
Jan L, probably if you're using LA, if you're from LA, Jan L is one of the best.
Yeah. And so we would just send them outlines of what we want. We want this many shelves. We want this thing. And they just send it back to us and they're rock solid. We can decide whether they're shock mounted. We can decide, all those other things. And so as far as the freight, but 55 inches is important. 50, when we make them 50, and I think it's like 20 or 22U or whatever. The reason we do that is because it will cost you a lot more if you go over that, because it's harder to put into a airplane. It doesn't go into the containers. So you have to be kind of conscious of not only who's building them, but the the requirements of what you're going to do when you freight. MJ and then Chris, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, so like R&R cases in Chicago has a bunch of prefab stuff that's truck pack, so they're all built to fit in the back of a semi real nice. I would say that like I've had some mixed experience with FedEx Freight, but if you have something that's super important, kind of like Rocket, but on a cheaper side, FedEx Custom Critical is pretty awesome. They show up in the truck. It's the same driver that delivers, picks up, and they're there to within the minute. And lots of times it's just barely more than LTL if you get in with the right rep and everything.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I love Pele cases, and I've had success previously with configuring them in a way that it fits on like a shipping pallet, the standard shipping pallet size, as you say, no higher than 55 inches. There is a company in California, I think, called Jason Cases. I'll post a link to them. They also do really cool laser cutouts inside of your cases, so depending on what equipment you have, you can get good protection for that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question.
I think we might want to pass on the next one. It's a little complex, or I could try to shorten it if you like. Just the first sentence. Recommendation for best point-to-point bi-directional video and audio transport protocol, CDN.
I would say Unity Connect. I think Brian can look at that. I think that's a Unity Connect. I don't think it's a CDN. I think that it's for musicians, I guess, well, it's real time. So your highest video quality, if you're talking about conferencing and it's a low latency connection, the highest video quality is still going to be Skype. You just have to, it's just goofy. Skype can do all kinds of funny things about the way it works, but we're getting higher frame rates. We're experimenting with vMix. If people are wondering, I have vMix now installed. I've done successful calls with vMix. It's easy to use. I'm still going to have to try to get Leland to walk me around a little bit in vMix, but the calls are working and the inputs and outputs are working. So we're in testing a vMix call to do some of this stuff, but the highest quality that we still see is in. I wish vMix would just give us more control. Like, it doesn't let me unleash the WebRTC. I want to have 720p at the highest bit rate that I can put in there. And it's like, well, if you want 720p, you can only have 2 megs a second. I'm like, I don't understand why that's like an artificial limit. So anyway, go ahead, Phil.
You can do vMix to vMix. I don't know if you want to test that. We can play with that.
Yeah. We'll try that, because vMix to
you
vMix
can get
might be good.
Full power through then that way.
I would recommend playing with the idea of vMix to vMix, but the easiest one is probably Skype, as far as that goes. And those are still old fashioned, and there's something about Skype that just kind of ignores a bunch of rules, so if you're doing, and that's video and audio. For audio, what Brian's been working on a lot is Unity Connect. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'm just becoming more and more enamored with the idea that when you get to this level of event, it sounds like of separating your audio and video solutions, because the things that work great for video oftentimes are not so great for audio. And if you just separate your solutions and think of it as two different things, you can always marry them back together at the other end and resync them up in whatever you need to do. But that way, it's like I can use a really good solution for video and a really good solution for audio, and they're not dependent on each other.
And then when we want to look at best of class, so we've been talking about consumer connections. If we want to talk about best in class, you're talking about using something like the switch. So the switch is going to give you super low latency. It's going to be expensive, but it's going to get between, I don't know if it can get to Hong Kong. I know that you can definitely connect London and New York. And I believe that the switch would be able to get you to Hong Kong. And so that's going to be all fiber. You're going to talk about 2 frames of delay between them, high quality, so the switch would be, and then a step down from there would be LTN, which will do similar things over the public internet, but it'll be 3 or 4 times the latency. And then we get into these. So we were really solving it for you in a consumer connection, but looking at 1,000 people in Hong Kong and New York and everything else, you may be able to find a fiber solution. And again, I would look at the switch. It's a horrible name for a service, but they still use it. And anyway, but that's for us, everything that's been mission critical that we have to get from one side to the other has been used that for the last decade. So it's just something to kind of think through there. MJ?
Quick follow-up question on the switch. Would you do local compositing if somebody is, let's say somebody's in Hong Kong, you've got a switch connection from them and they're in front of a green screen. Would you trust their signal over the fiber into your control room to composite them?
We've done it. But you have to, so the problem is you start spending real money. So the switch is 6x, it's $360 an hour to connect via the switch on a 250 meg stream, which is still going to do a pretty good key. But at $720 an hour, you can get uncompressed between the locations. So if the switch services both of them, you can get a 1.4 gig connection. And for about $3,000 an hour, you can get 4K uncompressed between those connections. And so that you can definitely do it if it's just money. So you can, but you can absolutely we've absolutely done good solid green screens over the switch, but we had to turn up the cost knob to get that to work. So next question.
Matt DeVries is asking about recommendations for iOS audio recording with manual levels with an external mic other than Rode. He finds the Rode apps buggy and worried about relying on them for an hour-long recording.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Yashai.
You should try Twisted Waves. Twisted Wave. It's a great application, very mature. I have good success with it.
Okay, great. I don't think we have anything else. Next question.
Chris S., will the second or third hour ever be available for those who can't make it? Daily question.
Yes, we're working on it. We will start posting audio of the first hours and some of the second hours and video of the second hours starting July 1. So they won't come out in mass. They'll come out in little bits and pieces, but that's the time frame right now. Go ahead, Sky.
How can we do the metadata? Because we're doing screen grabs. I'm not screen. I know Victor's doing scrapes of links and things and throwing them into Discord, but the metadata, of course, is always the critical thing. The searchable. I'm just saying we could crowdsource that possibly.
Yep. There's some other, as we move, when we realign our platforms and everything else, there's other ways to grab that metadata in real time. But right now it's going to be somewhat manual. Right now I'm just trying to get the content out, and then we'll slowly add. By the end of the year, you'll just think of an idea of, did they ever talk about that? And you won't even have to type it, and it'll just appear in front of you. But between now and then, it'll be a slow progress.
It'll be slow. Out wiki.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question.
TJ Worrell asks, in sending kits to clients, is Powerline networking an alternative if it's not feasible to run any Cat 5 or 6 cable?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, it just plain works. You can get up to 2,000 megabits per second, about 20 megabytes. And the only concern you want to have is make sure you hardwire both ends, because there are Wi-Fi repeaters which will introduce some latency. Powerline by itself should not introduce latency. And you want to have some concerns. If you were sending it to an industrial site, you want both the transmitter and receiver to be on the same phase of the power if you can. And TJ hit me up in Discord because I have lots of spare transmitters and receivers. I can send you some.
Very nice.
Very good. There you go. All right. Next question.
Alton Christensen asks a question about Zoom. Is there regional caching or prioritization going on? He's experiencing office hours in 2 different locations with similar speed and connections, blah, blah, blah. Suburban location via cable modem is very choppy. Urban location via Fios is very clean. Any ideas on the disparity?
Well, I'd be interested to know if the cable modem that he's using is AT&T, which is a dumpster fire. So the Uverse, whatever from AT&T is just horrible. And so my guess is that's what you have, and you're sharing an enormous amount of data with all your neighbors, and it's just like the worst service ever. I'm sorry, my parents-in-law have it, and so every time I go to LA, I have to deal with it, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, how does anyone pay for this? So Fios is fiber, so you're going to get a much better solution on Fios than you're going to ever get on a cable modem. And so I'm sure it's not so much the location, it's the quality of your connection. Fios is 10 times what a cable modem is, as far as a connection goes. And that's us testing thousands of people. I can tell you, once we have Fios, we generally know that if there's a problem, it's in the house. Bill, and then Colin.
Yeah, so it's which service are you buying? I agree that I have major problems with Uverse. We're an AT&T, but my AT&T internet is fiber, and I'm getting 940 up and down megabits per second, and it's been pretty rock solid. And as to delays, every link through different switches and stuff like that is potentially going to add new problems. So you'll never know exactly what's going to happen. It's not all going to be the same experience depending on where you are.
Go ahead, Colin.
The spectrum is equally problematic in this regard. And what you're dealing with a cable modem is a shared connection rather than a switched connection. So your actual throughput is entirely dependent on your neighbor's usage, and generally you're going to see much higher jitter there. You can test this using tools like Smoke Ping if you really care. But as a general matter, a switched connection is the winning solution. So you're going to get less jitter over DSL, although lower throughput overall. Less jitter over DSL than you're going to get over a cable modem, and obviously fiber is your winning solution there.
And we just watch cable modems on so many people just dissolve. Like everything we've tested and everything's fine, and then they just dissolve.
The other point to be made here is that when you're dealing with something like Zoom, which is using WebRTC or a variant of WebRTC, they're actually trying to chase your available throughput and give you the best experience for that throughput. And if you've got significant jitter, it's chasing you up and down your throughput range and giving you higher or lower quality as it thinks it can deliver it. So you're getting a very spotty performance in that sense as well.
If this is a mission critical thing for you, and it may or may not be, but if it's mission critical, a wireless point to point from the top of your house is better than a cable modem if you can afford it. Like it is cable modems are just a dumpster fire. Yashai?
A quick test. It's a very famous company called Fusion Connect. They have a speed test plus that lets you test the latency and the jitter. So you can write that, and that's.
But the hardest part with cable modems is that it can be really good 1 minute and then it's just gone the next because it's shared. A bunch of people start downloading something or watching YouTube, and suddenly you don't have a connection. It's a horrible idea. It was a cheap way for people to solve it when they were trying to find the fastest, cheapest way to get people internet so they can get cut out of the industry. But it's just a horrible.
Yeah,
horrible
like
idea.
you said, the jitter is really a big factor in the quality. It's not just the latency and the speed.
And isn't it true that they can, like a speed test packet might get priority, but a WebRTC packet might not, depending on your IP?
If they're packet shaping, absolutely. Chris, and then we'll move on.
I have a cable modem here. I've got my internet provider coming tomorrow to sort it out because I can see my neighbor's Apple TV. If I scan my network, he's not on my local network, can't see the device. But through Bonjour or whatever service Apple uses, I can see my neighbor's Apple TV. And I've seen him try to connect to my TV from his apartment through the cable network in the apartment.
Router they
It's crazy.
supplied you is horribly misconfigured. That's what
I know.
All right. Next question.
Ron Ressler asks, what audio hardware other than mics and mixer would you recommend for a YouTube live stream to clean up single user one camera setup? Thanks, Alex and the panel members.
I mean, the thing a lot of us have are mix pre's. so mix pre's are a great, they have great preamps, so you're going to have a much better solution as far as the mic. It's got a couple inputs. You've got 3 inputs at that point. You can definitely get less expensive solutions. I think that we've talked about a couple of them. I was looking for one of them. I might have one around. Go ahead, Victor, while I'm looking. No, go ahead.
Yeah, like you said, an external preamp, but by the time you go spending the money on an external preamp, you could get a mix pre 3 and have one of the best preamps out there. So,
So that's probably the least expensive way. You can get things like this. This is an X2U from Shure. This is USB on one side and XLR. You'll see it's all beat up because it sits around in my bag, and this is how I connect some stuff there. You're not going to get the same quality, and it won't handle overmodulation very well. That's the big thing with the mix pre, is that you have some limiters and so on and so forth that are in there as well. So, but the mix pre is kind of the best, at that price range, at the 600 price range. I mean, there's some, you go below that and you start getting into Zoom and other things, but they're reasonably good as far as interfaces go. So a Zoom would be in kind of if you're getting into the $200-300 range, $200 to $400 range, Zoom is probably your range there. And then you start getting into single points at like this. I think this is $100 or $150 or something like that. So those are the.
Doug was holding up one as well, an option.
Sorry, say it again.
Yeah. Doug was holding up an option.
Yeah.
Is that the MXL?
Yeah, the MXL. So I'm using it right now. Seems to be working pretty decent.
It doesn't have quite as much control as the X2U, but the MXL definitely works as a kind of a straight on, because I think it's just got high, medium, and low. Is that right? Little switches.
Yeah, just a high, medium, low. On this right here. Yep.
Yeah, and but that does work as kind of a basic put it in line. Go ahead, Phil, real quick.
I got a weird question about I've got a FET head that I use, a little preamp, inline preamp, but when I have my gain knob on my USB pre all the way down, it still lets level through, which seems odd I'm set all the way to 0 on my USB pre, and I guess because of the phantom power giving it juice, it gets something a shot maybe, I don't know.
Okay, the FET head is basically just give you a gain of like 17 to 20. So when you're in 0, whatever it is, you already
it's plus 20.
It's already exactly. That's
right.
what it is.
Yeah. Makes sense, but seems.
I think that turning the knob all the way down is -60, I believe.
That's why they call it cloud lifter.
but I think that it's -60. Like going all the way to 0 is not really 0. It's going to -60 on the gain. And so if you have something that's pushing it up, it can get back into -40, which you'd be able to hear. If it's adding that gain to it.
Right.
Like if you have something that's pushing gain into the system,
right.
It's going to -60 generally you aren't going to be able to hear, but if it's open, you can always close that channel, and that you can if you close the channel, then it's different than turning it all the way up or down.
Clark, one quick addition. The Claret preamps from Focusrite are an option for a little less money. They're very excellent.
And Brian, were you going to say anything there?
Sorry, I was just it's a kind of a common misconception that a gain knob on any mixer, like if it's all the way down, that means off, and it doesn't mean off. It just means I'm not adding gain. So, there's still signal coming through, and if the signal coming through is loud enough, you're still going to hear it.
The only way to turn it off is turn it off. And with a USB pre, you just hit the little button and select something that's not there. There's like.
I was going to say they're often labeled infinities. That just means infinity doesn't mean infinity.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question.
Dan Burt is in the process of setting up his home office. Can I post short videos with an iPhone to show the space somewhere? Discord? We have a share your setup space in Discord. You can't share videos, but you could share a link to it.
Yep, absolutely. You can put a link to it, so that go ahead and post it in Discord. Discord's the place that you want to put it. But share my setup is the place to do that. And then you can ask questions and people will definitely respond. So definitely put it in there. That's a pretty popular place in Discord. Next question.
Hey Mitchells, what's a Carnet and how do you manage it? What did Rocket do better for you with this?
So for the panel, actually, for everyone, would it be useful to bring someone in to talk about Carnets? I mean, to bring a Carnet company in to...
you discussed this in another second hour a month or so ago, didn't you?
We talked about it in passing, but we didn't really talk about like really what Carnets do and how we work with a company called Boomerang out of Chicago, and that's who builds our Carnets, and it's different than Rocket. Rocket, one of the things that Rocket does is does the Carnet, but what Rocket, but what we've done tons and tons and tons of our own Carnets. I mean, we were doing them every week. You're not supposed to do it. That's not how it's designed. Usually you get a Carnet and you can move all your equipment in and out of the country all the time with the same Carnet. It's just that we had different builds all the time. So we got really good at it. There's probably a second hour where we can talk about like the actual process. And I probably have to send the Carnets back, but I can probably get pictures of them and show them what you're trying to do and talk about that process. But I could probably get someone from Boomerang to come in and talk to us about the process of Carnets and what it takes to do it. It might be an interesting second hour I just didn't know if it was too vertical for us to do that. Bill and then Jan, keep it quick. We're running out of time.
Very fast. It's a little vertical, but the thing is there's so little international production, much less now. And I don't think until there's a cure, there's going to be a huge upspike in that. So I'd rather learn about other things, but on my own.
Yep. Go ahead, Jan.
Carnet is just an inventory list with serial numbers and location of manufacturer. If you have an inventory program, you won't need anybody to do it. Rocket Cargo specializes in rock and roll touring and getting things from point A to point B, keep you in control. But they don't themselves. They use common carriers. So it's a misconception, and they are super expensive. We don't.
And they're really good. They're really good. They just make it go away. Anyway, so they're the Mac version of I will pay extra so that I don't have to ever think about this again. That's my whole thing. It's the people that I work with that just want to make sure the equipment gets from one end to the other. They're the only ones we've used that we never had any phone calls. We never had any issues. We've done it on our own, and we sometimes end up. We had one where we were in Berlin and our equipment showed up in Bonn, and anyway. So that's the only thing. And we'll talk more about Carnets. But the Carnet basically, I mean, just in a 1 minute overview, what a Carnet does is I say, this is the equipment that I have as I leave the country, and someone in customs approves it. When I get to the other side, they confirm, someone in customs confirms that it showed up in the country. When I leave that country to come back, someone confirms in that country that I'm leaving with all the equipment. And when I get back to the United States, someone or wherever country I'm going into, they confirm that it all showed up. And what it does is it keeps you from paying taxes on every time you come in. So that's why you use Carnets, is to keep paying from 25% taxes or 15%, whatever the tariffs are in these different countries, even the United States. So it's a little bit of BS, but it works, because they don't check every piece of equipment. They randomly check it, or some in Mexico, they don't check it at all. They just go, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, there we go.
Somebody in the chat likened it to a
Germans
passport
check
for your
everything.
gear.
Yeah, it's like a passport for your gear. The Germans check it all. Oh, anyway, so next question.
Stan Chan, what would be the best starting lens for a Blackmagic 6K for training video, webinars, and interviews, with a budget and without?
24-70. I mean, a Canon L series 24-70, or if you're on a budget, a Sigma 24-70. I mean, for most training, that's what you're going to want. For me, it's a 16-35, 24-70, 70-200 is kind of a wide range of things that are going to cover a lot. And then if you want to go 100-400, but those are the lenses that and then you want, for interviews, you want an 85, and for standard, a couple other things, 50. But if you're doing training, if you're doing really, really pretty things, you want prime lenses. If you're doing training, you really want a good, solid, middle of the road zoom lens, like a 24-70. And I have used the 24-70 all over the world. So that's kind of the camera. That's the lens that hangs on my camera most of the time. unless I go off somewhere else. And you've got 30 seconds, Bill.
The 24-70 is fabulous. You can also find a lot of 24-105s that cover the same range, because
Yep,
that's the
level
kit
one.
lens that came, and people who upgrade sell them.
And I would get a 2.8, 2.8 fixed is what you want, so that you can do lower light. Sky, go ahead.
The specific model you have on your Blackmagic, that the short lens that you use, I tried to look it up, and there's like 30 different varieties.
I think it's a Canon 16-35 L series.
I thought it was a Lumix Micro Four Thirds.
Oh, you're talking about not on my that's not what I have on my.
Okay,
the difference between my
Micro
overhead
Four Thirds,
camera here.
yeah,
the Micro Four Thirds, I have a Lumix 14-42 powered lens.
Powered. That's the question. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And then, all right. So Annie Mitchell's wanted to review Laura's setup, but we're not going to have time to do that today. So maybe we'll get Laura back and we'll do it another day to see how she's doing with her computer. She's been working on it. She comes in and gives us updates, and we didn't get one today. We had her here for a while, and we didn't get an update. So we'll work on that. All right. So now we are shifting subjects. It's now 8 o'clock. And we are continuing our little series talking about cameras. So Wednesdays, to kind of give you, we're settling into a system. So just to kind of give people a little bit of an overview, Mondays, starting this coming Monday, will be focused on education. So we're going to move away from ruthless reviews and go to education. We're going to continue to do the ruthless reviews, but more informally over the pre-shows. We're going to so we're not going to give it up. If you're still working on your background and everything else, don't worry, we're still going to look at it and give you a hard time. If we're still there, but we're going to not make it the whole hour. So we really feel like there's a need for educators to get more input on what they're doing and talk through those things. And so we're going to dedicate a whole hour every Monday to that. Tuesday, we're doing audio. We're focused on audio. Wednesday is cameras. Thursday is generally going to be special guests. So we're going to bring somebody in that the Thursdays will be the special guest day. And then we're probably going to move Friday to visual effects. So visual effects and graphics. And so that'll be kind of where things kind of lean in, because I don't feel like we're representing that part of the business very well right now. And it's, which is funny, because when I did this the first time, when I did Pixel Core, all we did was visual effects and none of this other stuff. And this is all I wanted to add to it. I was like, I just want to add all the other media production. And so now we've added all of that, and there's no visual effects. So we're gonna kind of go back the other direction and bring more guests in. So as an example, for this week, we've got Leo Laporte on Thursday. We've got Steve Wright on, which kind of fits into visual effects, but we're going to have him on next Thursday because I've already booked him as I work this out. But we'll have different speakers, in those areas. And this Friday is not visual effects. It's Jeff Keithley talking about virtual production. But starting next week, we're going to experiment with that. But as we go into July, we're kind of launching into that. Now, we're going to get to this week, and we're talking about cameras. Cameras is Wednesday, and Chris has been kind enough to kind of take this on and figure out what we're going to cover every week on cameras. And so I'm very excited to have him. I think Chris and I have known each other for over 10 years. I think that we see each other every once in a while, and we met in South Africa. But Chris has been doing tons and tons and tons of film work. And so we're really, all these weeks have been amazing. So we're going to now jump into, what are we going to talk about today, Chris?
Thanks so much, Alex. And thanks everyone for being here. I just wanted to talk
Alex,
about...
the Zoom is still showing is on. Or the
Sorry?
YouTube.
Oh,
YouTube link.